be discussing the lake ecosystems in Florida.
There are over 30,000 lakes in Florida. Lakes can be divided into subcategories. For the sake of this project, there will be 3 levels in a lake. The benthic level at the bottom of the lake, the profundo level at the middle depth, and the limnetic is the open water. The littoral zone is the zone where the lake meets the shore. Lakes are mainly composed of algae, plankton, fish, crustaceans, and lots of vegetation. Outside species like birds and alligators also affect the ecosystem. Lakes are a very diverse ecosystem.
Lakes have many biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic factors include all living things, from algae to zooplankton to the cattails to the brim and to the largemouth bass. Abiotic factors are the non-living factors. The temperature of lakes depends on the wind and sunlight, which depends on the season. For example, during the summer, lakes are hot at the top and cooler at the bottom. In the winter, lakes may be cooler at the top but warmer in the bottom. In the fall or spring, the lake is usually a regular temperature. This is because of the wind. Although Florida doesn't really have 4 distinct seasons, this really affects us. The temperature of the lake is usually between 57 degrees Fahrenheit to 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Rainfall is another abiotic factor. Lakes are a part of the water cycle. If the rainfall is more than usual, certain animals or plants can be covered because of the rising water level or vice versa. This has devastating effects. The oxygen content is another abiotic factor. If the circulation of oxygen throughout the ecosystem is off, it will be extremely devastating. The amount of oxygen in the water depends on how much is generated or used. If an invasive species comes in and starts using up an abundance of oxygen, the oxygen level will be off. Biotic and abiotic factors of the environment are extremely important.
Human impacts are really affecting our lakes. One form of human impact is eutrophication. This is phosphorus or other chemicals entering a lake in a negative way. These chemicals can enter through sewage systems, agricultural fertilizers, or runoff. This affects the plankton, which are the organisms that clean up the biomass, or even the prey for other organisms. Another form of human impact on lakes are invasive species. This can happen by stocking lakes or exotic species being released into lakes.
Hello. Firstly, we'll be going through this chart. On this chart, you can see in the Florida lake ecosystem, main producers include phytoplankton, cattail, water lilies, and duckweeds. Now, the things that consume these producers are zooplankton, crayfish, snails, aquatic worms. Sometimes bluegills and tadpoles consume these as well. And moving on from that, we'll be going to the consumers, meaning that they are consuming the things that eat the producers. These, of course, are crayfish, bluegills, minnows, tadpoles, largemouth bass, butterfly peacock bass, turtles, and that's about it. The last 4 animals that you see on this chart are technically terrestrial animals. However, they play an important role in this ecosystem. Here is our food web. We will start at the top. Alligators consume bass, turtles, small fish, snakes. Bass consume minnows, turtles, bream, and small fish. Turtles consume crayfish, snails, and plants. Snakes consume bass and small fish. Small fish consume tadpoles, bluegill, zooplankton, and crayfish. Crayfish consume zooplankton, snails, and sometimes small fish. Snails and worms are decomposers, so they feast on the biomass, phytoplankton, and plants. Zooplankton eats phytoplankton. Phytoplankton and plants get their energy from the sun. And that's about it.
As Pablo explained, the alligator is at the top of the food chain and the phytoplankton is at the bottom. The sun is the main source of energy in the ecosystem. Phytoplankton, cattail, duckweed, and water lilies are producers. Zooplankton, crayfish, snails, and worms are the primary consumers. Minnows, tadpoles, bluegills, brim, and ducks are secondary consumers. Turtles, snakes, and bass are tertiary consumers, and of course, the alligators are the quaternary consumers. Again, the sun is the main source of energy. Energy flows through the food web as each organism is consumed. The sun gives 1 million kilocalories of light energy. Then only 10% of energy is passed to the producers. For example, between the minnows and tadpoles to the bluegills and brim, about 100 kilocalories are absorbed. Then only 10% of that energy is passed on. Then that keeps going until it obviously reaches the top. The food is the chemical energy. The nutrients are constantly being cycled. This is created by the decomposers breaking down the dead organisms. No energy is ever lost in this process. This all forms an outflow of heat energy. This is an extremely crucial part of life on Earth. Lakes are one of the most treasured ecosystems in Florida. Their diversity and beauty has always brought in attention.